Hello everyone, I'm so glad to meet you here. At first, thank company Protect for the opportunity to communicate with you online. Today we talk about the topic clinical applications of micro-implant Anchorage. The surgical operation and beautiful cases are attractive, while the basic knowledge is neglected. So the subheading I adopt is mastering anatomic structures and emphasize on details. Micro-implant has been used widely in orthodontic clinic. Micro-implant Anchorage, in short MIA, in another word, temporary anchorage device, in short TAD, which are the same thing, different names in different countries. Different companies. There are lots of books about micro-implant written by different authors from different countries. As can be seen, it's still a hot topic. This is the contents of this course, including 4 parts. Part 1. How to select types of micro-implant on different insertion sites, different diameters and lengths on different insertion sites. Part 2. How to select insertion ways of micro-implant. There are mainly 2 ways of insertion of micro-implant, self-drilling and pre-drilling. Part 3. 3 common and representative anatomic structures are chosen to analyze. They are zygomatic oval ridge, palatal oval bone, and external oblique line of mandible or buccal shelf area. Part 4. Surgical procedures and details of micro-implant insertion will be introduced later. Let's see the Part 1. Different types of PROTECT micro-implant. There are 3 types, marked by different color. 1.6 purple, 1.6 orange, 2 blue. In the other type, there are 3 different lengths respectively. In addition to micro-implant, the instruments are also indispensable. This is a straight hand driver. The second and the third one are control angle hand drivers. The difference between them is this part, the ring, which is convenient to tighten or loosen micro-implant. The fourth one is a short hand driver, used in some sites difficult to reach, such as palatal oval bone. These are tips connected to handles. This one is usually connected to control angle hand driver or low speed handpiece, and this one is usually connected to straight hand driver. These 2 ones are pilot drills, in another word, pre-tapping drills, used for pre-drilling. This one is a short one, and this one is a long one. Besides micro-implant and instrument, some assistive tools are needed also. The implant motor is used for pre-drilling, combined with low-speed handpiece. It's the same one used in implant department. Part 2. Different types of micro-implant on different insertion sites and insertion ways. Let's see the table. 1.6 millimeters micro-implant is inserted usually on anterior oval bone between central incisors or central incisor and lateral incisor, or between lateral incisor and the canine. The insertion width is self-drilling. The 1.6 millimeters micro-implant is usually placed on these sides between the second premolar and the first molar, palatal oval bone, and mid-palatal suture. The insertion widths are self-drilling and pre-drilling at first. The 2 millimeter micro-implant is usually inserted in the zygomatical oval bone ridge and external oblique line. At present, MSc is increasingly used in clinical work. 2.0 mm by 10 mm micro-implant is required. Self-drilling and pre-drilling at first are both feasible according to different conditions. Part 3. The important section in this course. 3 common and representative anatomic structures are chosen to analyze: zygomatic oval ridge, palatal oval bone, external oblique line or mandible or buccal shelf area. Reviewing the anatomic structure of this at first, and then talking about the key points of insertion. The first one is zygomatic oval ridge. The anatomic structure is reviewed at first. It lies on this part. This is zygoma, and this is maxilla. The connection part is zygomatic oval ridge. It's between on the second premolar and the first molar in adolescent, and between the first and the second molar in adults. How to determine the insertion site? The insertion site on soft tissue is on macrogingival junction, or 1 mm above. Why? The attachment gingival is resistant to inflammation, but in some patients it's insufficient, so the insertion width size has to be moved 1 mm above or even more. Regarding to vessels and nerves, there are no major vessels and nerves, so it's relatively safe. The bone tissue of this area is cortical bone, and the success rate of insertion is high, refers to the documents. In adults, it lies between the first and the second molar. Please avoid the damage of roots when inserting. A vital anatomic structure exists in maxilla, maxillary sinus. Its range is from premolar to the third molar, so pay more attention to it and avoid penetration into it. Although it seems okay, even penetrated, according to some documents. How to avoid penetration into maxillary sinus? This is the CBCT of one of my patients. The maxillary sinus is almost penetrated by the micro-implant. The low density area is maxillary sinus, and this is micro-implant, alarmingly dangerous. The risk of penetration into maxillary sinus occurs when the distance is at a level 7 mm apical to orbital ridge crest, and the angle of insertion should be increased. That means the closer to maxillary sinus, the wider angle needed between micro-implant and the root axis. This angle. After reviewing the anatomic structure of zygomatic orbital ridge, let's talk about the key points of insertion on this area. Firstly, determine the site in different directions. In vertical direction, the site is on macrogingival junction or 1 mm above, about 5 to 6 mm from cervical margin. This part, in the sagittal direction, is between second premolar and first molar in adolescent, and between the first and second molar in adults. The insertion angle is changing when inserting. Vertical to the bone surface at first. When the cortical bone is penetrated, the angle is changed. Finally, the angle between micro-implant and the root axis is 30 to 40 degrees. The hand driver is screwed 30 rotations per minute. That means 1 rotation in every 2 seconds. This graph is cited from the book written by Professor Park. It describes that micro-implant should be tipping 10 to 20 distally along the shape of the root in case of root damage. Seeing the procedure through a case. Firstly, determine the insertion site by placing the probe. In the sagittal direction, is on the midpoint of first and second molar. In vertical direction, is on macrogingival junction, about 5 to 6 mm from cervical. After that, micro-implant can be inserted with a straight hand driver. Vertical to the bone surface at first. When the cortical bone is penetrated, the angle can be changed. The angle is changing during the procedure. Meanwhile, tipping 10 to 20 degrees distally is okay. When the angle is 30 to 40 degrees between micro-implant and root axis, please do not change the angle. Screw the handle until the tip to the end. When the microsite is pressed by the tip and begins to whiten, stop it and remove the hand driver. It's finished. Check it with nipple. Sometimes patients feel a little painful or discomfortable, which may be caused by periodontal membrane reaction. When micro-implant clings to it, in this condition, the insertion angle or site should be changed. Next, we talk about the second insertion site, palatal oval bone. The anatomic structure is still reviewed at first. Let's start from soft tissue. The thickest muscle is nearly 6 mm. The thickness is increases by 2 mm from gingival margin to palatal vault. So the length of micro-implant is 6 mm at least. Regarding to vessels and nerves, there exists greater palatal neurovascular bundle, approximate 1.5 to 2 mm from gingival margin to apical oval bone. This part should be paying more attention. The bone tissue of this area is divided into 4 categories: D1, D2, D3, and D4. The success rate of insertion is high in D1 and D2, while lowest in D4. The insertion site on this area is usually between the second premolar and the first molar, or between the first molar and the second molar. The palatal roots are more widely spaced than buccal roots, so it's safer than buccal. Then the key points of insertion is explained. Determining the site at first. In the vertical direction, it lies on the corner of palatal vault approximately. In the sagittal direction, it's between the second premolar and the first molar, or between the first molar and the second molar. Micro-implant is inserted with control angle hand driver. Perpendicular to the bone surface at first. When the cortical bone is penetrated, the insertion angle is changed. Then 30 to 40 degrees between root axis and micro-implant finally. The hand driver is screwed 30 rotations per minute. Thirdly, we talk about external oblique line or buccal shelf area of mandible. As above, the anatomic structure is reviewed at first. Let's review the boundary of buccal shelf area. The inside is mandible. The outside is external oblique line. From the first molar to third molar. The inside side of soft tissue is on macrogingival junction. There are no major vessels and nerves, and the mandibular canal is not close to it, so it is relatively safe. The bone tissue on this area is cortical bone, and the stability of micro-implant is okay. The insertion site is between the first and the second molar. In case of root damage, Key points of insertion. In the vertical direction, it's on macrogingival junction. In the sagittal direction, 1 mm distal to the midpoint between the first and the second molar. There are mainly two shapes of buccal shelf area of mandible. The first one is flat, with sufficient attachment gingival. The other one is steep, with insufficient attachment gingival. The insertion width on the flat one is self-draining, and on the steep one is pre-draining at first, in case of micro-implant slipping and snapping. These photos describe the two shapes of buccal shelf area. The two ones left are steep. The two right ones are flat. Part. From the first to third molar, buccal shelf area is increasingly flat, but attachment gingiva is increasingly narrow. This graph is also cited from a book written by Professor Park, which describes that micro-implant should be tipping 10 to 20 degrees distally, along the shape of root, the same as zygomatic over the ridge, in case of root damage. Next, we talk about the surgical procedures of self-drilling and pre-drilling, respectively. In the self-drilling insertion system, micro-implant is inserted directly by a straight hand driver. Please do not change the angle. 20 to 30 between tooth axis and micro-implant in the buccal lingual direction when inserting. Also, it should be 10 to 20 degree tipping distally. In the pre-drilling insertion system, penetrating into cortical bone at first is needed. With pilot drill, combined with micro-implant motor and low-speed handpiece do the work. The rotation speed of pilot drill is 400 to 600 rotations per minute, and it should be paused in every 5 minutes. The necrosis of bone tissue occurs when it is exposed in 47 centigrade for 1 minute, according to the documents. Then micro-implant can be inserted through different tools, straight hand driver and control angle hand driver. In the buccal lingual direction, 20 to 30 degree between tooth axis and micro-implant. In the sagittal direction, 10 to 20 tipping distally. Three representative insertion sites have been explained yet. Let's see part 4. Ideal insertion site of micro-implant. What's the ideal insertion site? Several conditions must be satisfied. The first one is the good bone density. From the table, as can be seen, the bone density of jaw increases gradually from anterior of the bone to posterior area. However, the bone density on the upper molar area decreases because of maxillary sinus. Sorry, this part. The second, micro-implant can not affect the tooth movement. For example, when denture is distalized, micro-implant may loosen or jump if touched by root, and the distalization of denture cannot be achieved also. The third, insertion sites need sufficient space between roots, which is convenient to operate and not easily to damage the roots. The fourth, it's much better to be far more from maxillary sinus. The fifth, gingival is not pressed by elastic chain, elastic stretch, nicotinic coin spring. The last one, micro-implant cannot affect the movement of mucosa and perineum. Okay, in order to understand them clearly, let's demonstrate the operation. The screen should be cut at first. Please wait a moment. Do you see me? Let's see the instrument and the micro-implant at first. This is denture model. There are tips. This one is connected to through the hand driver, as mentioned above. And this one is connected to control angle hand driver or low speed handpiece. Through the handle, control angle handle. And these are micro-implant with different diameters and lengths. The first anatomic structure is zygomatic of the ridge. First, determine the site. We can touch it with our finger. In the sagittal direction, it's on the midpoint between the first and the second molar. In the vertical direction, it's on the macrogingival, about 5 to 6 millimeters from cervical margin. And then, micro-implant can be inserted with straight hand driver. How to assemble the straight hand driver? Press the tab and then inserting the tip to the end, then losing the tap. It's okay. Check it. The tip cannot be extracted. Choose the micro-implant. 2 millimeters by 10 millimeters micro-implant should be used. Of course, it should be sterilized before operation. Let's pick up the micro-implant. It's okay. is inserted on the side, vertical to the bone at first. When the cutting bone is penetrated, then change the angle. The angle is often changed during the procedures. Meanwhile, the micro-implant should be 10 to 20 tipping distance. When the angle is 30 to 40 degrees between micro-implant and the root axis, please do not change the angle. And then screw the handle until the tip to the end. When the microsite is pressed by the tip and begins to whiten, stop it and remove the hand driver. It's okay. Check it with nipple. The second one is PROTECTORHO bone. Also, determine the site at first. It's usually on the second premolar and the first molar, or between the first molar and the second molar. This time we choose this site between the first and second molar. It usually lies on the corner or patenting vault. In this part, we should pay more attention to the vessels and nerves. It's about 1.5 to 2 centimeters from margin to apical orbital bone. Then we choose a micro-implant. 1.6 millimeters by 8 millimeters is okay. This time we should use control angle hand drivers because it's difficult to inserting the micro-implant directly. Open the type, inserting the tip into it. To the end, close the type. It's okay. There is a pathway on the straight handle. Insert the control angle handle driver along the path. Like a straight hand driver, press the tab, inserting the control angle driver to the end. Then it's okay. Pick up the micro-implant. Then the micro-implant can be inserted vertical to the bone surface at first. Screw the handle when the cutting bone is penetrated. Then change the angle. Finally, the angle between the micro-implant and the root axis is about 30 to 40 degrees. Then, do not change the angle. Screw the handle until the tip to the end. When the microcell is pressed by tip and begins to widen, stop it and remove the hand driver. It's okay. Check it with nipple. In some conditions, when you're inserting, you may feel it so difficult to screw. In this condition, we should change the site or insert angle. The last one is buckle shape error. In this area, 2 mm by 10 mm microplant should be used. Let's remove the microplant firstly. Of course, at first, decide the insertion site. Also, we can touch it with our finger. In the sagittal direction, it's on the midpoint between the first and the second molar, and 1 mm distal is better. In the vertical direction, it's on the macrogingival. There are two main shapes of it. The one is flat, the other is steep. When it's flat, the microplant can be inserted with a straight hand driver directly. Inserting the microplant on the insert site with an angle 10 to 20 degrees between microplant and the root axis. Please do not change the angle when inserting. And 10 to 20 degree tipping display is also needed. Screw the handle until the tip to the end. Then stop it and remove the hand driver. It's finished. When it is deeper, the insertion width should be pre-drilling at first, and then a microplant can be inserted with straight hand driver or control angle hand driver. When the control angle driver is needed. For example, when the mouth of patient is small and cannot be open big enough, then it's difficult to screw the microplant directly. And this time we should use triangle hand drivers. The insertion angle and the procedures is the same as the straight hand driver. Okay, that's all of this course. Thanks for your attention, and your suggestions are appreciated. If you have got any questions, please get connected with the agent of company Protect. We will answer your questions respectively. Thank you.